The maid's daughter was a quiet, observant girl who lived in a small, cozy house on the edge of a big city. Her mother worked as a maid for one of the wealthiest families in town, cleaning, cooking, and managing the household with tireless dedication. Despite the long hours and hard work, she always made sure her daughter had what she needed to go to school, to study, and to dream. The girl had always been curious and intelligent, asking questions that many adults overlooked and noticing things that others barely paid attention to. Every day after school, she would rush home to help her mother, running errands, cleaning, and sometimes even tutoring her younger neighbors. She loved to help people and felt proud whenever she could make someone's day easier. Though her family was not rich, the girl believed that kindness and sharp eyes could make a big difference. She had a particular interest in how people felt and how their bodies worked. She noticed when friends had a small fever, when a neighbor's cough seemed worse than usual, and even when someone's mood changed because they weren't feeling well. One afternoon, the girl went with her mother to the house where her mother worked. The house was enormous, filled with shiny furniture, high ceilings, and quiet, echoing rooms. It was a world far different from her own modest home, but she had grown used to it. She moved through the corridors quietly, always careful not to disturb anyone. Today, however, something felt different. The young son of the billionaire family had been ill for several days, and everyone in the house was tense and worried. The child had a pale face, his energy seemed low, and he spent most of his time lying in bed. Doctors had come and gone, each with their own opinion. They had run tests, examined him thoroughly, and yet, none of them had found the problem. They told the parents that sometimes children just took time to recover and assured them that there was nothing serious. But the girl watched closely, seeing things the doctors missed. She noticed the slight tremor in the child's hands when he tried to reach for a glass of water. She noticed the faint bluish color in his lips that grew worse whenever he laughed or cried. She saw how he struggled to keep his balance, how his breathing sounded shallow, and how tired he always seemed. To anyone else, these might have seemed like small, unimportant signs, but the girl knew something was wrong. Her mother was busy tidying the rooms, and the household staff were running errands, so she found herself near the child's room more often than anyone else. She would sit quietly at the edge of the bed, watching, listening, and making notes in her mind about everything she observed. The girl had learned early on that careful attention to small details could reveal big truths. She remembered stories she had read about people who were sick for months without anyone realizing the danger, and she felt a responsibility to speak up, even though she was just a child. One day, while the child was resting, she gently approached him and asked if he wanted her to read a story. He nodded weakly, and she opened a book she had brought from home. As she read, she noticed that he struggled to focus on the words, his eyes flickering as if he were seeing double. She also saw a faint sweat on his forehead, which didn't seem to match the room's temperature. She whispered quietly to herself, "Something is not right. The doctors are missing this." She wanted to tell her mother, but she feared being scolded. What if her mother thought she was imagining things or exaggerating? She decided to wait for a moment when her mother was less busy. Later that evening, when her mother was folding clothes, the girl gently spoke up. "Mom, I think something is really wrong with the little boy. The doctors haven't noticed, but I saw some signs that worry me." Her mother paused, looking at her daughter with a mix of surprise and concern. "What signs?" she asked. The girl described everything she had noticed. The tremor in his hands, the color of his lips, his shallow breathing, and how tired he seemed all the time. Her mother listened quietly, her expression serious. She knew her daughter was intelligent, but she also knew how easy it was to be dismissed when one was young. She thought about it for a moment and then said, "We need to be careful. You might be right, but we must be respectful. Let's see how we can tell the parents without getting in trouble." The girl nodded, feeling a mix of fear and determination. She didn't want to get anyone upset, but she couldn't ignore what she had seen. That night, she lay in bed thinking about the child. She imagined what could happen if the signs were real and no one acted in time. She felt a deep sense of responsibility, as if the weight of the child's life rested on her small shoulders. She knew she had to be brave, even if the world didn't listen to a maid's daughter. The next morning, she went back to the house early, carrying a small notebook she had prepared. She had drawn diagrams, written observations, and even marked times when she noticed the changes in the child's condition. She quietly followed the child's routine, watching when he woke up, what he ate, how he moved, and how he reacted to small activities. Each note made her more convinced that she was seeing a serious problem that everyone else had missed. She also began observing the doctors and nurses more closely. She noticed how some of them relied too much on test results and didn't pay enough attention to what the body was showing naturally. She realized that while tests could miss things, careful observation could reveal patterns no machine could detect. Her heart raced with a mix of fear and excitement. She was just a child, but she understood that she might hold the key to helping him. By mid-afternoon, the girl gathered enough courage to speak directly to the child's parents. She knew it was risky. They were wealthy, powerful, and not used to listening to a young maid's daughter. Still, she approached them politely, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "Excuse me," she said. "I noticed some things about your son that the doctors might not have seen. I think he might need some special attention." The parents looked at her in surprise. A child? Speaking to them about their son's health? They were used to being the ones giving instructions, not receiving advice from someone so young. For a moment, they hesitated, unsure whether to dismiss her. But the worry for their son was stronger than pride. They asked her to explain, and she carefully shared everything she had observed, describing the signs in detail and explaining why she thought the doctors might be overlooking them. The room was quiet as the parents listened, the tension palpable. They exchanged glances, clearly weighing whether to take her seriously. The girl's mother stood nearby, supporting her silently, her eyes filled with hope and fear. The girl felt her heart pounding, knowing that everything depended on these few moments. She spoke with honesty, clarity, and care, hoping that someone would finally hear what she had to say. After a long pause, the father spoke. "Thank you for telling us. We will look into it. Don't worry, we will check everything again." The girl nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and nervous anticipation. She didn't know if the adults would really act, but at least she had tried. She had spoken the truth, and that was all she could do for now. Days passed, and the girl continued her careful watch. She visited the child whenever she could, bringing small comforts, reading stories, and quietly observing his condition. She noted the times when he seemed weaker and the moments when he showed slight improvements. She also kept track of the tests the doctors ran, noting what they checked and what they ignored. Her notebook became a record of meticulous observation, filled with sketches, times, and detailed notes. The girl's attention to detail did not go unnoticed by the household staff. Some of the older servants began to admire her intelligence and bravery, even if they didn't fully understand what she was doing. They quietly supported her, bringing her extra blankets, helping her keep her notes organized, and making sure she could spend time near the child. The girl felt encouraged by their subtle support, realizing she was not entirely alone. One afternoon, she noticed a sudden change in the child's breathing. His chest rose and fell rapidly, his lips turning a deeper shade of blue. Alarmed, she ran to her mother, who quickly went to the parents. The urgency of the situation finally broke through their hesitation. They called the doctors immediately, demanding careful attention and additional tests. The girl watched from the hallway, her heart in her throat, knowing that this moment could be the turning point. Even though she was just a young girl from a modest home, her eyes and instincts had noticed something critical. She had been brave enough to speak up when others ignored her. That day, as the doctors examined the child more closely and ran new tests, she realized that sometimes courage and careful observation mattered more than titles, degrees, or age. She felt a small, quiet hope, believing that maybe, just maybe, she could make a real difference. That night, as she lay in bed, she thought about the journey ahead. She knew it would not be easy. The child's condition was serious, and the doctors might still miss something. But she also knew she had a gift, the ability to see, notice, and act. She resolved to stay strong, to keep observing, and to never let anyone say that her age or background meant she couldn't help. The girl drifted off to sleep with a sense of purpose, ready to face whatever came next, determined to save a life if she could. The next morning, the girl woke early, her mind racing with thoughts about the child's condition. She knew she had done the right thing by speaking up, but she also knew that observing from a distance was not enough. She needed to keep watching closely to notice patterns and changes that the adults might miss. She took her small notebook and pen and headed to the mansion, slipping past the large doors and into the quiet hallways. She found the child lying in his bed, looking weak and pale as usual. She sat nearby, her eyes scanning every little movement, every flicker of expression. She noticed how his breathing changed when he tried to sit up, how his hands shook slightly when he reached for a toy, and how his eyes sometimes looked unfocused. Each small sign told her more about his condition. She wrote down everything she saw, careful to be precise and detailed. To her, even the smallest detail could make a difference. Over the next few days, the girl became more determined. She began to track his symptoms like a detective, noting the time of day when he felt weaker, what he ate, and how his body reacted. She also started observing the doctors more closely, noticing how some of them seemed rushed, how they sometimes ignored subtle signs, and how their attention was divided. She realized that adults often trusted tests and machines more than their own eyes, and that a child's careful observation could sometimes reveal what machines could not. One afternoon, she noticed something alarming. The child's lips had turned an even darker shade of blue, and his breathing was more uneven than usual. He tried to lift his arm, but it trembled uncontrollably. The girl felt a pang of fear and ran to her mother. "Mom, he's worse today. You have to tell the parents," she said, her voice urgent. Her mother nodded, grabbing her phone and calling the parents immediately. The household staff began to move quickly, helping prepare for the doctor's arrival. When the parents entered the room, their faces were pale with worry. The girl spoke up again, detailing every observation she had made. She explained the tremors, the color of the lips, the uneven breathing, and the moments when the child seemed disoriented. She also mentioned the patterns she had tracked in her notebook. The parents listened carefully this time. They could no longer dismiss a child's words when her observations were so detailed and consistent. They called the doctors back, insisting that all previous tests be reviewed and additional ones conducted. The girl watched silently, her heart pounding, hoping that someone would finally see the truth. As the new tests were conducted, the girl continued her careful watch. She stayed close to the child, offering comfort, reading stories, and gently talking to him to keep him calm. She noticed how frightened he seemed when the machines beeped and the doctors asked questions. She whispered encouragements, held his hand, and smiled when he looked at her. Her presence seemed to calm him, giving him a small sense of security in the unfamiliar environment of the hospital-like mansion. The household staff began to notice the girl's dedication and intelligence. Some of the older servants quietly supported her, bringing extra blankets, helping organize her notes, and making sure she could stay near the child without getting in trouble. They whispered encouragements and small words of praise, which gave her more confidence. She realized that even though she was young and not wealthy, she could make a difference with persistence and care. One evening, the girl discovered a pattern that the adults had completely missed. She noticed that the child's breathing became shallow and irregular after certain meals. She also saw that his energy levels were lowest in the afternoon and improved slightly in the morning. She began to track his reactions to small activities, noticing subtle changes in his posture, expression, and alertness. Each observation made her more certain that she was on the right track and that the doctor's previous diagnoses were incomplete. Her mother encouraged her to document everything carefully. Together, they organized the notes, charts, and patterns into a small report that clearly illustrated the child's symptoms and their timing. The girl added sketches and diagrams to make the observations easier to understand. She was careful to use simple, clear language, knowing that her goal was to communicate the truth effectively. The girl knew that sharing her findings with the parents and doctors could be risky. Adults might dismiss her again or think she was overstepping her bounds. but she felt a strong responsibility to the child. She couldn't stay silent when she knew the signs were serious. Her courage grew with each passing day, fueled by her determination to save a life. One morning, she approached the parents with her organized notes. She explained her observations calmly and clearly, pointing out the patterns she had found. She emphasized how the child's condition worsened at certain times and after certain meals, and how previous tests had not accounted for these changes. The parents were impressed by the level of detail and the thoughtfulness of her report. They realized that she had carefully studied the child's condition in a way that adults often overlooked. The parents decided to follow her suggestions, calling in a specialist recommended by the girl. They shared her notes and observations with the specialist, who listened attentively. The specialist asked questions, checked the child thoroughly, and ran additional tests. The girl stayed nearby, noting every reaction, every slight change, and every improvement. Her dedication and careful attention impressed everyone in the room. Days passed, and the child's condition slowly began to show signs of improvement. The specialist's treatment plan, guided in part by the girl's observations, started to take effect. The tremors became less frequent, his breathing improved, and his energy returned gradually. The household staff and the parents watched in amazement, realizing that the young girl's attention to detail had played a critical role in this turnaround. The girl remained humble, insisting that she had only done what anyone should do when they saw someone in need. She continued to care for the child, reading to him, keeping him company, and observing his progress. Her presence became a source of comfort and stability for him. The child responded positively to her attention, showing small smiles and moments of laughter, which warmed everyone's hearts. The household began to recognize the girl's bravery and intelligence. The parents, initially skeptical, now admired her insight and dedication. They spoke to the staff about the importance of listening to her and considering her observations seriously. Even the doctors, who had initially dismissed her, acknowledged her keen eye and careful attention. One afternoon, as the girl was taking notes near the child's bed, she noticed a small but important improvement in his color and breathing. She smiled quietly, feeling a sense of relief and pride. Her careful observations and persistence were finally making a real difference. She realized that courage, attention to detail, and a willingness to speak up could overcome barriers like age and social status. The girl also began to teach herself more about health and medicine. She read books, watched educational programs, and asked questions whenever she could. She wanted to understand why her observations had been so important and how she could continue to help. Her curiosity and determination grew stronger with each passing day. As the days went on, she became more confident in her abilities. She understood that being young did not mean being powerless. Her careful observations, courage, and determination were helping to save a life. She felt proud of her role in the child's recovery, but she remained humble and focused on the task at hand. The household settled into a routine where the girl's observations were considered seriously. She continued to watch the child, noting improvements and setbacks, and sharing her notes with the parents and specialists. The child responded positively to her attention, gaining strength and energy day by day. The girl's role had transformed from a quiet observer to an essential part of the child's care team. By the end of this part of the story, the girl had proven that intelligence, courage, and careful observation could make a life-saving difference. She had faced skepticism, risked dismissal, and continued to speak up, all because she cared deeply about the child's well-being. Her actions showed that even the youngest and most humble among us can make a powerful impact when we pay attention, act with compassion, and refuse to be ignored. As the girl continued her careful observation, she began to notice a pattern that no one else had seen. The child's condition seemed to fluctuate with his activities, meals, and even the weather. She recorded every detail, making notes in her small notebook, drawing diagrams of his symptoms, and timing when they appeared. Her eyes caught subtle movements and signs that adults had dismissed as unimportant. Each day, her confidence in what she had noticed grew, and so did her determination to ensure someone acted on it. One morning, the girl noticed that the child's lips had turned a deeper shade of blue than usual, and his breathing sounded labored. His small hands trembled, and he struggled to lift his head. Alarmed, she ran to her mother, who had been preparing breakfast. "Mom, it's worse now. You have to tell the parents immediately," she exclaimed. Her mother quickly followed her into the child's room. The parents were present, already tense with worry. The girl, without hesitation, began describing every observation she had made over the past few days. She spoke clearly and confidently, explaining how the child's symptoms changed after meals, during certain times of the day, and when he tried to move around. She emphasized that the signs had been consistent and that the doctors might have overlooked them because they had relied too heavily on tests. The parents listened intently, their expressions a mix of concern and amazement. They could see the care and intelligence behind her observations. For the first time, they realized that a child's keen eye could notice things adults might miss. They promised to call a specialist recommended by the girl and insisted that the doctors review her notes carefully. The specialist arrived the same afternoon. He was a calm, patient man who listened to the girl as if she were an expert. He asked her to explain everything she had observed, and she spoke without hesitation, pointing to her notebook and detailing the patterns she had discovered. The specialist nodded, taking careful notes and asking thoughtful questions. He examined the child, comparing his findings to the girl's observations. Slowly, he began to see the same patterns and signs she had noticed. With the specialist's guidance, new tests were ordered, focusing on areas the previous doctors had ignored. The girl watched every step, noting the child's reactions and documenting changes. She could see that the specialist was impressed by her attention to detail and the accuracy of her observations. This gave her a sense of pride and validation, but she remained humble, knowing that the child's well-being was the priority. The tests revealed a condition that was rare and potentially life-threatening. The previous doctors had missed it because the symptoms were subtle and inconsistent, but the girl's careful tracking had highlighted the pattern. The specialist explained the diagnosis to the parents, who were both relieved and astonished. The child's illness could now be treated properly, and thanks to the girl's insight, they had caught it in time. The girl felt a wave of relief and satisfaction. Her persistence, careful observation, and willingness to speak up had made a real difference. She continued to sit by the child's side, providing comfort and support as the treatment began. She read stories, sang quietly, and held his hand when he was frightened. Her presence gave him a sense of security that no machine or medication could provide. Over the next few days, the child began to show improvement. His color returned, his breathing became steady, and his energy slowly increased. The household staff and parents watched in amazement as the young girl, who had been dismissed at first, had become the key to the child's recovery. They praised her intelligence, courage, and compassion, realizing that age and social status did not determine the value of insight. The specialist continued to monitor the child, and he often asked the girl for her observations. She noted changes in his appetite, mood, and energy levels, providing valuable information that helped guide the treatment. Her role had transformed from a quiet observer to an essential member of the care team. The girl's careful attention, empathy, and intelligence had saved a life. The child's parents were deeply grateful. They could see that without the girl's keen eye and persistence, the diagnosis might have been delayed, putting their child at serious risk. They spoke to the household staff about the importance of listening to her, respecting her observations, and valuing her intelligence. The girl, though proud, remained humble, knowing that her focus was on the child's well-being, not recognition. As the child continued to recover, the girl became more confident in her abilities. She understood that careful observation, attention to detail, and compassion were powerful tools. She spent hours studying books about health and medicine, learning more about the human body and how to recognize signs of illness. Her curiosity and determination grew, fueled by the knowledge that her actions had real consequences and could save lives. The household began to respect her more, recognizing that her youth and background did not limit her abilities. The parents encouraged her education, providing books and resources to expand her knowledge. They also praised her courage and patience, showing her that they valued not only her intelligence but also her character. During the child's recovery, the girl continued to observe him carefully. She noted small improvements and setbacks, keeping detailed records. Her insights helped the specialist adjust treatments and monitor progress. She provided comfort, reassurance, and companionship, helping the child regain confidence and strength. Her presence was a constant source of support, demonstrating the power of empathy and dedication. The household staff, once skeptical, now admired her greatly. They spoke to each other about her intelligence, perseverance, and the remarkable way she had saved the child's life. Even the doctors, who had initially dismissed her, began to listen and consult her observations. She had shown that age, experience, and social standing did not define the ability to make a difference. The girl's journey had been challenging. She had faced skepticism, fear, and doubt, but her persistence, careful observation, and courage had led to a breakthrough. She had transformed from a quiet, observant child into a vital part of the care team, helping to save a life that everyone had feared might be lost. Her dedication had proven that compassion and intelligence, combined with action, could overcome obstacles and make a real impact. One afternoon, as the child played quietly in the room, the girl noticed a smile on his face for the first time in days. She felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that her actions had contributed to this moment. The child's recovery was slow but steady, and she continued to provide care and support, always watching for signs, documenting patterns, and offering comfort. The specialist commended her detailed observations, noting that they had provided critical insight into the child's condition. He praised her for her attention to detail, her patience, and her willingness to speak up. The parents expressed their gratitude, recognizing that her courage and intelligence had been instrumental in saving their child's life. Through this experience, the girl learned valuable lessons about responsibility, courage, and the importance of careful observation. She realized that even the smallest voices could make a powerful difference when combined with knowledge and compassion. Her actions had not only saved a life but had also inspired respect and admiration from those around her. The breakthrough in the child's treatment marked a turning point for the entire household. The girl's role was recognized and valued, and her insights continued to guide the care process. She remained humble, focused on the child's well-being, and committed to learning and observing. Her actions had proven that intelligence, courage, and empathy could overcome skepticism and social barriers. As the days turned into weeks, the child's health steadily improved. The girl continued to document changes, provide comfort, and offer support. Her presence became a source of stability, reassurance, and hope. The parents, staff, and specialists all acknowledged the remarkable role she had played in the recovery process. By the end of this part of the story, the girl had achieved a significant breakthrough. Her observations had led to the correct diagnosis. Her persistence had convinced the adults to act, and her care had supported the child's recovery. She had proven that careful attention, courage, and empathy could make a life-saving difference, even in the face of skepticism and doubt. Her journey was far from over, but she had already demonstrated the incredible impact a determined, observant, and compassionate individual could have on the lives of others. The child's treatment began in earnest after the breakthrough diagnosis, and the girl remained by his side through every step of the process. Each day, she watched carefully, noting small changes in his energy, mood, and breathing. She knew that recovery would not happen all at once, and that patience and persistence were just as important as any medication or treatment plan. She read to him, kept him company, and gently encouraged him to eat and rest, making the atmosphere in his room calm and comforting. At first, the child was weak and frightened. He was not used to the unfamiliar procedures, the beeping of machines, and the presence of specialists. The girl stayed close, holding his hand when he was scared and whispering reassuring words. She noticed how his eyes would brighten slightly whenever she was near, and she realized that her presence gave him comfort that no medicine could provide. She made sure that every small victory, like a sip of water or a smile, was acknowledged and celebrated, giving him hope and confidence. The household staff watched in amazement as the girl remained dedicated and focused, despite the long hours and emotional strain. They began to support her in small ways, bringing her meals, helping organize her notes, and ensuring she could stay near the child without interruption. They admired her patience, intelligence, and unwavering commitment. Even the parents, who had once doubted her, now recognized the immense value she brought to the child's care. They spoke of her courage and insight to everyone around, ensuring she was respected and included. As the treatment progressed, the girl noticed subtle changes that indicated improvement. The child's color began to return. His breathing became more regular, and his tremors lessened. Each observation she made was carefully recorded in her notebook, which had become a detailed account of his journey. She compared each day's notes, looking for patterns, progress, and setbacks, always mindful of how these details could inform the next steps of his care. She also observed the impact of the specialist's adjustments to the treatment. Whenever a new approach was tried, she watched closely to see how the child responded. She noted improvements in his appetite, energy, and mood, and she carefully documented any discomfort or difficulty. Her observations allowed the specialists to fine-tune the treatment, ensuring the best possible outcome. Her dedication and attention to detail became an invaluable part of the care process. One afternoon, the girl noticed a small but important improvement. The child managed to lift his head on his own for a few seconds and smiled at her when she encouraged him. She felt a wave of relief and joy, knowing that her careful observation and care had contributed to this moment. She quietly celebrated the progress, understanding that recovery was a gradual process, and that each small victory mattered greatly. Over time, the child's strength returned steadily. He began to play quietly, reaching for toys and interacting more with those around him. The girl encouraged him gently, ensuring that he did not overexert himself but also helping him regain confidence in his abilities. She read stories, played simple games, and offered constant reassurance. Her presence provided stability, comfort, and hope during this challenging period. The parents were deeply grateful for the girl's role in the recovery. They could see that without her careful observations, persistence, and compassion, the treatment might not have been as effective. They expressed their gratitude in words and small gestures, offering opportunities for education and learning to support her growth. They praised her courage, intelligence, and dedication, recognizing the life-saving difference she had made. The girl remained humble, insisting that she had only done what anyone should do when faced with someone in need. She focused on the child's well-being, ensuring that he was comfortable, supported, and encouraged every step of the way. She continued to document his progress, noting improvements, challenges, and reactions to treatments. Her detailed records provided valuable insight for the specialists, parents, and staff, helping guide decisions and ensuring that the child's recovery remained on track. As the child's health improved, he began to interact more with the world around him. He laughed softly when the girl read stories, played quietly with simple toys, and responded to her gentle encouragement. Each small achievement was a testament to the girl's care, patience, and observation. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that her actions were helping him regain strength and confidence. The specialists continued to monitor the child, often consulting the girl for her insights and observations. They recognized that her keen eye and detailed records provided information that was critical to understanding his condition and progress. They praised her for her intelligence, attention to detail, and compassion, acknowledging that her role was as important as any professionals in supporting the child's recovery. Throughout this period, the girl remained focused and attentive. She continued to read, observe, and care for the child, always mindful of the delicate balance between rest, activity, and treatment. She encouraged him gently, celebrated each small achievement, and ensured that he felt supported and safe. Her presence became a constant source of comfort and stability, helping him navigate the challenges of recovery with confidence and hope. The household staff and parents grew to admire the girl's resilience, patience, and insight. They saw how her dedication had made a tangible difference, and they began to value her contributions beyond what they had initially imagined. They offered guidance, support, and recognition, ensuring that she felt respected and appreciated for her intelligence, courage, and compassion. The girl's mother watched with pride as her daughter continued to make a difference in the child's life. She saw her daughter's determination, bravery, and empathy, and she felt a deep sense of admiration and gratitude. She encouraged her daughter to continue learning, observing, and caring, knowing that these qualities would guide her in all aspects of life. As the child grew stronger, the girl noticed more significant improvements. He began to sit up on his own, play with small toys, and respond more actively to conversations. His energy levels increased, and his mood brightened. Each day brought new signs of recovery, and the girl carefully documented every change, understanding the importance of tracking progress to ensure continued improvement. The parents expressed their deep gratitude repeatedly, acknowledging the girl's critical role in saving their child's life. They spoke of her courage, intelligence, and dedication to anyone who would listen, ensuring that her actions were recognized and celebrated. The girl remained humble, focusing on her work and the child's well-being, but she felt a quiet sense of pride and accomplishment. Through this experience, the girl learned important lessons about patience, responsibility, and the power of careful observation. She realized that empathy, courage, and attention to detail could have life-saving consequences. She saw that age and social status did not define the ability to make a difference, and she understood that her actions, no matter how small they seemed, could have a profound impact on others. By the end of this part of the story, the child was on a steady path to full recovery. His health had improved significantly, and his strength and energy were returning. The girl had played a vital role in this transformation, providing observation, support, and comfort that guided the treatment and recovery process. She had shown that intelligence, compassion, and persistence could overcome skepticism and obstacles, making a real and lasting difference in someone's life. The child's parents and the household staff continued to respect and admire the girl, recognizing her as an essential part of the child's recovery. They encouraged her to continue learning, observing, and growing, ensuring that her potential would not be limited by her age or background. The girl remained humble, focused, and dedicated, understanding that her work had made a meaningful difference and that her courage and compassion could continue to touch lives in the future. In these days of recovery, the girl's bond with the child strengthened. She saw him regain not just his health, but also his spirit. He smiled more, laughed softly, and responded to her presence with trust and affection. The girl felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that her careful observation, courage, and empathy had contributed to restoring his life. She had proven that a determined and compassionate individual, no matter how young, could create a profound impact and save a life.